Hello, we're back for another visit to see Roger at St Lleurwg to keep working on his organ. We've got a long to-do list of things that we want to finish off. The plan's already out of the window this morning because we've been working on other things, problems that have come up with changes of the weather. So we'll see how far we actually get on this list. But before we start, I want to thank everyone who's watched our videos. Last time we were here 2 weeks ago, we were very excited that we just passed 100 subscribers, and we've had a fantastic 2 weeks and we're nearly up to 300. So welcome to everyone who's just joined us and subscribed, and thank you to everyone who's been here for a while. I really like reading the comments. There's been some really interesting questions and advice as well, so please post comments, questions, if there's anything you want to know about what we're doing, or give us any tips in the comments as well, so that would be great to hear from you. So I think we'll get down to some work.
But Kingsley,
Yeah, Dennis?
why are you wearing that wig?
Well, Dennis, it's quite simple really. The reason is so I hope that makes sense, Dennis.
Eh?
So the function of the reservoir is it takes air, in this case from the blower, the electric blower. Originally it would have been from hand pump feeders. It stores it and it conditions it to the right pressure by these weights on top of it, controlling the pressure. So if you're not playing anything, the reservoir will fill up slightly, so that it's got a good capacity if you want to play a big chord or something loud for a while, and it will slowly decrease a little bit. And the height of the reservoir also adjusts how much air is let in from the blower. You don't want to overinflate them because it's not very kind on the leather joints, but we probably want a bit more wind in this reservoir than it is at the moment. So we will go around the back and have a look at how we're going to do that. So I'm now sat on the blower. We've got the reservoir here, and in between there's a valve here, the guillotine valve, that controls how much air is allowed from the blower into the reservoir, so that when the reservoir is full it doesn't let any more air in. And we can see there's a string here controlling the guillotine valve, so if I pull it up we'll see it lets a bit more air in and the reservoir goes up a bit, and if we drop it back down it will go down. So the height of the reservoir is controlled by the length of this string, so if we want a bit more, the reservoir to be a bit higher, we just have to shorten the string. Now that the reservoir is actually open a bit more, we can see that one of the folds goes inwards, and then at the top the other fold comes outwards. If you only had folds going one way, as the reservoir went up and down, the pressure inside it would actually change due to the changing of these angles. So this is called a compensated system, so you have one that goes in and one that goes out. So as the pressure changes due to this one, the opposite happens due to the top one. So that the pressure stays the same no matter how high or low the top of the bellows are. And to make sure that the middle plate moves up and down equally, we have this mechanism here which we call a regulator. It makes the middle one move up half the rate that the top one's going, and it keeps it in line as well. And if anyone knows about steam engines, you might recognise this linkage, because it's the same mechanism as James Watt used on his beam engines. He called it a parallel motion, to make sure that the piston rod went in a straight line when the end of the beam was moving in an arc. So it's the same kind of technology, just in a different use. Dennis, can you
Yeah.
tell us what you're up to?
Well, these little motors have had their levers replaced and they're being fitted back in by locating a pin which operates the note, and there's a little hole in the middle which allows you to screw it on to the pin. The pin is conveniently threaded, but it still takes quite some effort to get it to screw into place.
And the next one's impossible to get to as well, isn't it? This one.
That is going to be very difficult. You can see it's now sitting up a little bit. That's ideal.
Sorry, Dennis?
So Roger, you fixed the horn diapason, so I think it's time to cross that off the list.
I can cross that one off. That's all done. Okay. Why are you wearing that wig? Dennis asked you that earlier on.
Well, it's quite important, yeah. The reason why I'm wearing the wig Did that make sense?
No.
We're working down our to-do list. The humidity change in the church has affected the organ in a few ways. It's making the pedals misbehave. So we're not going to look at the pedal-related issues today. We'll come back to them when we've decided what we're doing. We were going to adjust the couplers because the pedal couplers were too tight when we were here a couple of weeks ago. And they were making the keys, pushing the keys down when you weren't actually playing anything. But the humidity changes have sorted that out, so we can cross that off the list without actually having to do any work.
Oh.
So that leaves us with tuning the reed as our next job. So we can ping the ruler on the side of a desk.
Oh.
Yeah. And if we do make the ruler longer, it pings a lower note, it vibrates more slowly. And if we do the ruler shorter, it pings more quickly. So from a technical point of view, this is because the frequency of a vibration of a spring body is dependent on the weight and the stiffness of the spring. And when we make it longer, we're giving it more weight, so that makes it slower. And also, because there's more spring, essentially, that's moving, it makes the spring stiffness lower. So that's why it vibrates more slowly. And this is related to pipe organs because this is kind of like a part of a reed, a reed pipe. And so it's an important thing to learn. The length of our bit of the reed is going to control the pitch, and so we can use that for tuning. So we've got two parts. This is because it's a lower one, it can come apart, but the smaller ones they don't. So this is a resonator, and then this is the actual reed itself is in here. So if we take the boot off, we can see the bits of the reed. So what we have here is it's quite like a clarinet. So you'd be playing it in your mouth like that. So we've got a brass shallot, and then on top of it we can see the curve of a tongue, and that's the bit that vibrates. So normally the wind would be coming in through the boot and blowing around the reed, but if I suck through the other end, the wind's going to be doing the same thing. And we'll see if we can get this to vibrate. Unfortunately, that wasn't too good. Often you get little bugs crawling down into the bottom and dying, which stops the pipe speaking. But, so there you can see the tongue vibrating. So how do we tune a reed? There's two ways of tuning it. People talk about tuning it at the top and tuning it at the bottom. So tuning at the bottom is tuning the reed itself. And if you remember back to that ruler, if we move this little wire up or down the reed, we can change the length of the bit of the reed that is actually vibrating. So if we pull it up, it makes it a longer reed, essentially, longer tongue, and so it's going to be a lower note. If we slide it down, then it makes it shorter, and it's going to vibrate faster and be a higher note. So that's tuning at the bottom. Remember, back to last time when we were talking about tuning, you can change the pitch of a pipe by changing the length or the effective length of the pipe itself. And in this case, we can do it by this tuning scroll on the resonator body. We can make the resonator longer or shorter. On an oboe, you have a cap, like a shaded pipe, and you can make that, move that to tune it as well. So which one are we going to do? If you tune at the bottom, it will affect both the volume of the pipe and the pitch of the pipe. So if you have the tongue vibrating on its full length, you can imagine it's going to move up and down, and because it's the whole length of it is vibrating, it can get a lot of air travelling through it and into the pipe, and that lot of air will make a lot of noise. Whereas if the tuning wire was all the way down, only a small bit of it at this side would be vibrating, and therefore you wouldn't be getting so much air and the pitch wouldn't be so loud. So what we're going to do is we'll tune it. I'm going to tune it at the bottom using this, but then once we've tuned them all and we're happy that they're in tune, we're going to go through the rank and we're going to listen to them with the notes next to each other and say, are they all speaking at a similar volume that we like? And if there's any of them that are too loud, we'll adjust the tuning at the top and then bring them back, change the volume and the tuning with the tuning wire at the bottom, so that all the pipes are going to be regulated to the same volume, or the right volume and the right pitch. So we're going to do a bit of both.
markers there.
Yes.
Yeah, mark that one. We have tuned all of the horns, the reed pipes, and we tuned it at the bottom. We then had a listen to them to see if they all sound even, and they all do except for one of them we've got, which is slightly quieter than the rest, and it's this one here. And so what we're going to do, you can see that the tongue of this one is all at its longest. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull the tongue open a bit, which will mean it will go a bit sharper,
Right.
a bit higher, which then means that we can move the actual tongue, the reed at the bottom. We can move the tuning wire on that up a bit to make that longer, which will bring us back down into tune, but we'll also let some more air through, so it should make it a bit louder. So we'll have a go at that. So Dennis, if you can give us that note with the principal. We've had another successful day working on Roger's organ. I've just ticked off tuning the reed, and I'm sure we'll be back soon to have a go at finishing the rest of our list.
Well, are you going to actually tell us why you're wearing that wig, Kingsley?
Well, that's a good question, Roger. Have you ever heard of clickbait?
I have.
Yeah. Well, YouTube videos seem to get more views if they have an attractive female in them. Unfortunately, none of us fit that criteria, so I thought I'd wear a wig and see if that helps. My wife says it makes me look like Garth from, what was that film? Wayne's World.
Wayne's World.
So I don't think I tick the criteria now either. So we're just going to have to stick to trying to make interesting and informative content to get the viewers to watch. So thank you all for watching.
Thank you.
different